So is Billy Napier just saving his job one win at a time? Maybe?
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever those may be. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Indiana is going to try and beat Washington without Kurtis Rourke. Can they do it? And how will the rest of the Big Ten play out? And picks for Boise State, UNLV, all coming up on today's show. But first, that is Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators. And Brandon, I'm just confused because two of the first three games were embarrassing blowout home losses for Billy Napier. And I came on this show and said, I don't know why he's still the head coach. But over the last several weeks, I have a hard time seeing anything else other than, well, he's got to be doing himself some favors here to keep his job with Scott Strickland, the AD, because the last few weeks, Florida's been a good team. Not a great one, but a good one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I said this after UCF and Tennessee. I feel like that's actually more of a reason to get rid of him, is that it took him until year 3 to go, hey, maybe. Because during the first bye week, one thing that changed was that they took a completely different approach to practice. They got more physical. They changed how they practice. And all of a sudden, they got a lot better. And it's like, brother, it took you till year 3 to figure that one out? That's a bit frustrating there.
It's a while.
Yeah, it's a little bit for an SEC coach, but I do think that part of it for me is just I don't know if the team's playing loose or whatever it is, but it still doesn't change anything for me. There's no moral victories in football. Your wins and losses matter, not almost wins against Tennessee. You beat the crap out of Kentucky, which was a great game, great performance. But that's also the bare minimum expectation at the University of Florida. Kudos to Billy for, against Mississippi State, scoring the most points he's ever had a Florida Gators team score against an FBS opponent, and then going on top of that against Kentucky and bringing it from 45 to 48. But I do feel like some of this is just too little, too late, and that was one of the big issues when hiring Billy was, hey, he's really not that experienced as a head coach. And I do think that although he's putting things together, and although I am open-minded with the back half of the schedule, I do think that you're kind of being proven right if you were skeptical about his experience at the Power 4 level or his experience as a head coach.
So you mentioned the back half of the schedule, and they just blasted Kentucky into oblivion 48-20. Like, that's playing good complementary football, and Kentucky's been a thorn in Florida's side for the last couple of years. I do like your point that that's an aim low and achieve, get over the lowest common denominator, jump over a bar that is a piece of paper lying on the ground for Florida, but it's still an upgrade from where Florida was earlier this season when you were letting teams walk into the swamp and just run you out of the building. But the back half of Florida's schedule is now going to kick into high gear, but suddenly Florida State is, I legitimately wonder, are they going to get to 3 wins or are they going to be a 2-win team? I don't know. I don't know. Florida State is so bad. I mean, so bad. So I'd pick Florida to win that football game. And then you look at the rest of their slate and you're like, wait, LSU is really good, playing good football right now, but also struggled with South Carolina on the road. And I think South Carolina and Florida, pretty comparable teams right now. I think it'd be a great game if you put those teams on the field. Ole Miss is coming.
That game, by the way, just so you know, Florida would win that game. The only coach Billy Napier is 2-0 against.
Shane Beamer. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps, but still, they're solid teams. They're just not great teams. But I look at the back half and say, okay, Texas, Georgia, probably not. But the rest of the games, tell me why Florida can't win 2 of their final 3.
I can't tell you why they can't. Honestly, I do think that this is a significantly improved team, and I'm not buying in. I still have a lot of, we'll say, reservations about this coaching staff and how they're going to handle things, especially when you look at in 2022 through the last 5 games. Florida Gators went 2-3. Last year in the last 5 games, they went 0-5, so it's not exactly like Billy Napier tends to continue heating up late in the season. But I do think that they're winnable games. I think the funniest possible outcome is Billy Napier beating Lane Kiffin, just because Lane's the guy that every Florida Gators fan's like, oh, I want him to be the next head coach. And so I do think the funniest possible outcome is beating Lane Kiffin, just to see what the fan base reaction would be of, do you want Lane no matter what? Do you want the guy that lost to Billy? Like, what would it be? And so I think that'd be really interesting. But this is a team that can win these games, and having 3 of those games, or 2 of those games at home being LSU and Ole Miss, and then going to Tallahassee to play a really bad Florida State team that, now that we've both said it, probably going to win that game. It's going to be a potentially chaotic end of the stretch. But I'm still curious about, you mentioned earlier, those first 3 weeks blew out Samford, but you got blown out at home twice by a Miami team that is going down to the wire with every unranked team they play, it seems like, and Texas A&M, who looks genuinely really good. I can't get those games out of my mind. You've beaten a bunch of below 500 teams. You almost beat Tennessee, but almost doesn't count. And so I can't get those out of my mind. I need some kind of win where you look at this game and you go, hey, you should lose this game and you win. Even though Florida was underdogs against Kentucky, I predicted them to win. I was the only one on Locked On SEC's squad show to pick them to win. I bet on them to win, put my money where my mouth is. I need you to win a game that I don't expect you to win, because that's been a big issue with Billy Napier since 2022 Utah.
Coming into this season, my number looking at the Florida schedule was 5. Billy Napier gets to 5 wins. He will keep his job, and a premier college football head coaching job will not become available in the coaching carousel this offseason. He's 1 win away from getting there. I have a hard time believing they won't win any of their games down the stretch, if not at least because Florida State is on there, as we mentioned. But how likely do you think it is that Florida gets to 6, or dare I say 7 wins? Brandon, is this possible? Like, how big of an upset alert do Texas and Georgia need to be on with Florida coming off a bye this week?
I'd be pretty floored with that. I'm not going to lie. If they were to win 7 games, I'd be floored. I don't expect a Georgia or Texas win. I'm curious to see what that Georgia game looks like, just because Georgia's beaten Florida by 3 touchdowns 2 years in a row, and Billy Napier has never really kept it close. But this is clearly, and this is another thing, prior to the season, this was clearly going to be the best Billy Napier team that we've seen at the University of Florida. Depth-wise, top talent-wise, it was clearly going to be the best. The win total came more so from, can Billy coach this team to success, and this incredibly difficult schedule, which I was on board with you. 5 wins is what I expected. I said 5 or 6 wins this season's my expectation. I was told before the season 5 wins is the number. Then Miami happened, and I was told that that number is changing. And then Texas A&M happened, and I was told that there is no number anymore, that he's gone. And then he's still here. I think the number's 6 now, honestly. I don't care what any booster says about what they think the number. I think the number's 6. I think you win 6, you keep your job. And if you win 5, I think you should be out. Might keep your job depending on how they look. But as you mentioned, Florida State, let's not forget that this is a team that lost to 2-7 Arkansas at home last year. So Billy Napier has done some impressively bad things in the back half of the schedule. I don't think Florida's going to win Texas. I don't think they're going to win Georgia. But I do think that it's important to, again, moral victories don't matter, but I do think it's important to play those games closer, because those are the true national champion contenders that you're going to be facing through the back half of the schedule.
Brandon Olson, Locked On Gators. Appreciate it as always. Can Indiana win? Do you think Indiana can win without Kurtis Rourke this week at home against Washington? Do you think they can do it, Brandon?
Absolutely. I believe in Kurt Signetti, Florida Gators fans that want him hired.
Yeah, that's an off-season topic. But an in-season topic is, how do they do that? And we're talking about it next. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. So, NFL fans, you can get started this season with a big return on FanDuel. Even though the season has already started, you can get in on the action right now with America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So, we're about to talk about Washington and Indiana. So, the Hoosiers don't have their starting quarterback. They're favored by 6.5 points. Washington's a better team than you think. They just haven't always played at their best this year. They've been very inconsistent up and down, but they can move the football. If you think Washington's hanging around with Indiana, you go bet them plus 6.5. If you think Indiana, backup quarterback, be darned, is going to win anyway, and they're going to win big, you can go bet them minus 6.5. Whatever you want to bet for college football, it's all over at America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com. Can Indiana keep the good vibes rolling in Bloomington without Kurtis Rourke? I don't know. We're going to answer that question. It's a tough one. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers, and Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies. We've got a three-way attack going here. Jacob, we'll start with you. How confident are we in the backup quarterback situation over there for Curt Cignetti and the boys?
I mean, it's Washington, so I could probably play quarterback and we'd be okay.
Here we go.
Here
we go. This is why I was invited.
Yes, I feel like Palpatine right now. Good.
I can read this little graphic you got over here too. I understand why I'm here.
No, I think the backup quarterback situation is fine. Taven Jackson was the starter a year ago in Bloomington. Wasn't a good one, but he did start a year ago. So this is not going to be lights too bright, what the heck is happening type of situation here. And he did play the second half a week ago against Nebraska and looked pretty good doing it. 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, and pretty much was a plug and play type of guy. So I think with the system that Indiana runs, running the football with Ellison and Tyson Lawton and playmakers on the outside, I just think the system works really well. So if you don't have your starter for a game, possibly 2, I think we're going to be okay. It does help that, again, it's Washington.
Oh boy, Roman, are you just going to sit there and let him talk down to your dogs like that?
Well, I mean, that seems like the whole reason you brought me on this show, Spencer.
Excuse you. That's my name right there. You can see it on YouTube, and it should say underneath, neutral arbiter of college football, because that's my mantra when I roll out of bed in the morning.
Right.
Yes, and for all your audio listeners, it says how Indiana wins without their QB. So let's be fair here. Now, when I look at this, I'm really curious to see how this Washington defense responds. We saw them get just out physical by Iowa a couple weeks ago. Really interesting story on this Wednesday afternoon. Jed Fish went on a local radio show and said, hey, that's on me. I didn't do a great job making sure these guys were physically, mentally prepared in terms of the times, the 9 a.m. kickoff. That was way more different than I thought it was going to be. So he said he's trying a completely different approach on that front. And we have to keep in mind, as much as Spencer might want to omit this fact, this is still a top 10 Washington defense. They're number 8 in the country in yards allowed, number 16 in points, right there with Oregon, Spencer, in the same light in terms of points allowed. But
other teams in the college football world, Oregon was a random selection there on your part.
My bad.
Yes,
my
thank
bad.
you. Thank you.
Neutral arbiter.
That is my title in this particular capacity.
It doesn't physically say that right there, so I'm not going down that road. But no, I have a lot of confidence in this Washington defense. This is the toughest test this Husky secondary is going to face all year. And Steve Belichick loves to play man coverage. He's got guys that have great size and length on the outside, and I'm really curious to see if they can continue to win one-on-one battles in coverage.
Jacob, when Washington went to Iowa for an early kickoff, and let's just say it didn't go as planned for the Huskies, they gave up a 40-piece to the Hawkeyes with a quarterback who had not thrown a touchdown pass against a Power 4 opponent since 2021. Now, Roman, you're not going to hate this question as much as you think, but just let that sink in for another half moment for no reason in particular. When I think about Indiana and what they've done offensively this year, it's Kurtis Rourke. It's slinging the football, throw it all over the yard. Does that have to change for the Hoosiers in a dramatic way? Do they have to try and find that ground game success that Iowa did with Caleb Johnson?
The good thing is I don't think Indiana has to find it. I think they have it. It just has been overshadowed by, I think, what has been up to this point a Heisman-level performance from Kurtis Rourke. I think he should be in that conversation. There's a long way to go. Injury will play a part in this, but I think the running game has been there, and it's been something that when Indiana needs it, they go to it. And the offensive line deserves so much credit because they have just created every possible hole, big chunk play after big chunk play. Indiana will line up on 3rd and 8, and they'll run the football, guys. They don't care because they have that much confidence in what they're doing right now. And with a 2-back system, they are fresh all the time. And so in terms of the game Saturday, you may not see as many of the 25-yard breadbasket on the sideline throws that we saw with Kurtis Rourke because let's just be real. I don't think Taven Jackson has that in the bag. But again, I don't think you have to have him do that. Get the simple plays, one read, get out, take off if you want to. That's something we may be able to see Taven Jackson do. But no, I'm not worried about Indiana moving the football or scoring the football. They're the best team in the nation right now in terms of those things. So I'm not worried about that. Washington's defense is good, but again, this isn't Bloomington. We're on college game day. There's no way Indiana loses this game.
Roman, that Washington offense still has numbers that would turn a lot of people's heads for a 4-3 football team with losses to Iowa and Rutgers, but they're kind of the masters of move it down the field and come away with as few points as possible, whether that's missing field goals, having field goals blocked, going for it on 4th down and not being successful. Do you think Jedd Fisch has to rectify that going into this game or Washington won't have a chance?
You forgot penalties. Penalties are also.
I did.
Yeah,
I did forget penalties.
There are more ways to not score points, Spencer, and Washington has found a lot of them this season. And no, but you're absolutely right. Yes, and that's one thing that he said earlier in the week that he took a really deep dive on was the red zone offense, and a huge part of that, shocker, Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman has only gotten, I believe it's 24 carries over the last 2 games, or no, it's less than that. It's around 20 after getting just 9 against Iowa, where some of that's game script related. And Jedd Fisch said they've been managing his workload a little bit. He suffered a couple of bumps and bruises over the course of the season, took the bye week, took the last week and a half or so to get healthy, which is really nice to see. And that's something where it's really frustrating because, as you said, Spencer, when you look at this offense as a whole, the numbers are really nice. Washington has outgained their opponent in every single game this season, yet they're 99th in the country, averaging just 24 points a game. It's extremely frustrating to look at from that perspective. And then moving forward, you need to find ways to fix that. You've got a lot of great weapons on the team, especially when you just look at the way the play calling has been successful between the 20s. Now, when you get to the red area, score touchdowns. Grady Gross shouldn't have been put in position to miss as many kicks because you shouldn't be 14 for 28 and scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, that's not a ratio that's going to get it done. I got to tell you, as we're recording this show, I got back from a round of golf that reminds me a lot of the Washington offense. I am a pro at setting myself up to succeed, but once you put that flat stick face club in my hand on the smooth surface and say, put the white ball into the cup over there, it takes me at least 2 tries, sometimes more. So I empathize with Washington. It can be difficult.
Roman, you guys have what, USC next week? Is that right?
Yeah,
I think it's a perfect time to work on some things because it ain't happening Saturday. I'm just going to be real. You can work on penalties and red zone offense and kicking field goals against USC. Believe me, they'll allow you to. Just it ain't happening this weekend.
No, it starts this week. Starts right now.
You kick as many field goals as you want, man. We scored touchdowns. You know how many field goals our kickers had this year? 4, and he's made all of them.
That's insane.
Yeah, boy, the envy on Roman's face was just permeating through the screen.
You know why,
right,
Spencer? Because you remember what this Washington offense looked like last season.
Yes, it was very different.
We were spoiled by that, and yes, it's a coming back down to earth where it's like.
Well, and the other thing too is
this is how the other side lives.
Is here's if you just took a blank slate. Or if you removed all the external factors and just looked at Washington's offense, you'd be like, a guy who's thrown for, 15,000 yards in his career? I don't know. You got 3 receivers that I feel pretty good about. That's probably top 5, 6 receiving core in the Big Ten. And one of the 3 or 4 best running backs in the Big Ten as well. Yeah, they should be able to score points. But averaging 24 a game, doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Also, USC catching the random stray from Jacob up there. You would have thought that would have shown up from one of the Pac-12 guys here, RIP. But Indiana taking a shot at USC. And you know what? The Hoosiers being undefeated and USC not, that's the thing.
I do want to share.
That's the thing.
I do want to share with the audience that Spencer texted me last weekend, and he has seen Indiana a couple times. But when he watched the game against Nebraska, he was like, "Oh, they've got talent. They're good. They're not just a weird undefeated team that didn't beat anybody." It's like, yeah. And to be completely honest, that's what's awesome about this team is it's not a fluke. Like, there are legitimately talented dudes on this team, and Coach Sig is the best. I mean, College Game Day's in Bloomington, the first time ever on a Saturday. It's going to be awesome. Yes, Roman.
Okay, I want to admit something. I said the exact same thing while watching that game. I like the first drive. I was like, "Oh,
that's a real defense they've got there in Lincoln." And Matt Rule's got a good defensive staff and a lot of players, and Indiana was just going right up and down the field. And I was kind of like, "Oh boy, that's a real thing." Let's get to our game predictions here. Then we're going to predict the rest of the Big Ten to wrap up today's show. But I will start as neutral arbiter of college football here and host of this particular show. I refuse.
Enough times, it'll become true.
Yes, exactly. Beetlejuice. If I pick against Indiana and then it turns out to not work out, I would feel like a fool. If I pick against Washington in this spot in Bloomington and they win, I'll say, you know what? Hat tip. I don't feel bad about that one. It's a March Madness style pick. So give me Indiana to win the football game. I think their offense can still do enough. 31-20. I like 33-20, just like that. 33-20. Hoosiers win. There's some craziness in this one with a backup quarterback.
Ooh, all right. I like it. Now, I will say, if we lose on the game that you pick us, I'm blaming you, and I will only blame you. I understand that. Blamed. So I'm going to pick Indiana, yes, because I do the Indiana podcast, but I just think Indiana's the better team. Even with the backup quarterback, was telling people all week, don't overthink it. Don't go against what you've done all year long. And just from a talent and coaching perspective, you're going to be better in this football game. I think Indiana wins. I'll take 34-17 Hoosiers.
Let's talk jinxes first and foremost. Spencer, if Washington wins this game, I will do my cold open for the post-game show and just say thank you, Spencer McLaughlin. that will be my cold open.
If there's been a way to get me to root for the Huskies, that's as close as you can come.
Now, you know, as both of you gentlemen know, I am not one for predictions, as I am the world's biggest jinx. So watch me fence it here. Washington covers. That's what I'm going to say.
Okay, yeah, that was riveting stuff. The bosses are going to love that one. The bosses are, however, going to love picking every game in the Big Ten. That is what the three of us are doing coming up next. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, and it's available in over 30 states. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Just join over 10 million users and sign up today. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's LOCKEDONCollege is the code to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup when you download the PrizePicks app. Go check out PrizePicks today. I am going to double down on my take that Penn State is good, but not number 3 in the country good. They should be like number 8 or number 9. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers, Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies, still with me here. Are any of you going to join me in this glorious upset pick? It's in Madison, great crowd. Wisconsin's figured it out. I'm going Luke Fickell and the boys here over Penn State, top 5 upset in college football this weekend. Wisconsin wins, low-scoring game, 24-21.
I'll jump on the fact that Penn State is not as good as people think they are, and they are in the top 5 because there's nobody else to put in there. I think that's a really, really good way to put it, because they've won their games, sure, but they've yet to win a game that's been like, wow, what a great performance. What a great win. Penn State's a really good football team. And until they show me that, I just can't buy in. I'm with you, Spencer. Give me Wisconsin. I'm going to do it. I'm going to hop on the train. It's not going to happen because everybody in America wants it to happen. But I think Wisconsin, like you said, they're figuring it out at the right time. And Penn State has 1 or 2 games a year where they just lose when they're not supposed to. I'm going to take Wisconsin in the upset.
I'm going to stick with Penn State here. One of the big reasons is I had them in the Big Ten championship game before the season. I got to stick with it. Got to stick to the agenda there. So I'm happy with where they are right now. I think that we saw them avoid that near letdown, as we do see that every year, Jacob. We saw them avoid it at USC for one reason or another. We don't need to get into why, but this offense has been really solid. I know they're still top 10 in terms of yards per game, and I think they can figure it out. I think they still have another gear that they can find. That defense is still really solid. Yeah, give me Penn State here.
I was impressed with their USC performance. I was more impressed with their West Virginia performance. I don't think they have played as complete of a game since that week 1 win in Morgantown against the Mountaineers. So we're taking Wisconsin there. How about this one? Michigan State. This is a round of field goal spread. I think Michigan finally figures it out. Michigan State, I picked their upset last week against Iowa at home. They're on the road in the Big House. I like Jonathan Smith. He's going to be just fine in East Lansing. Might even get them to a bowl game this year, which would be a good accomplishment. But I think Michigan wins a slugfest here, 17-10.
I said on the Big Ten Squad show that came out on all of our channels that I'm watching this game incredibly close, because Indiana still plays Michigan State next week and Michigan coming up on the schedule. So I'm watching this game very intently. I think Michigan finds a way to win. It's going to be a gross game, but a close game. I just think, believe it or not, Michigan may have a little bit more firepower. Is that the right word to say on offense? I don't know. They at least have
definitely not.
Firepower and Michigan offense, they don't go together.
They don't. According to our friends at FanDuel, 40.5 is the total here. That's disgusting. Give me Michigan by a point, maybe, but I'll take Michigan because it's at home at the Big House.
Every time I've picked Michigan this year, they've lost. That being said, I'm picking Michigan again this week. Where I'm with you, Jacob. I look at this defensive line and I just think it's overwhelming. Aiden Childs has turned the ball over a decent amount this year, so I think that they're going to get some pressure on him and force him into a couple of turnovers.
Ohio State hosts Nebraska, favored by well over 20 points in this game. I think this is a statement opportunity for the Buckeyes at home. I love that defense. I think it looks kind of similar to the way the Indiana-Nebraska game went last week. Give me the Buckeyes 42-10 over the Cornhuskers.
I love getting the Ohio State comparisons. Our friend Jay Stevens is so mad somewhere in Columbus right now because I agree. I hate to be agreeing with Spencer, but I'm spot on with you. I think Ohio State just does what they're supposed to do. They've got big games left on that schedule. Nebraska's not one of them. If this was in Lincoln, okay, and if this was a game where Nebraska had possibly beaten Indiana last week or at least kept it close, I would feel better about this game. But, man, the way they just got drug up and down the field and beat down against Indiana, it's going to be 2.0 versus Ohio State.
I've got a bold prediction in this game. Ohio State wins 49-0. It's a shutout.
Wow. The
Buckeyes
defense with a big game against Dylan Raiola and company.
I like it.
I respect that. I respect that. I didn't think they would allow a point against Iowa. They allowed one measly touchdown. That Buckeyes defense is no joke. Only team to really score on them this year is Oregon, who I hear is a pretty good team. They've ascended to the number 1 ranking in the country. I just found that out earlier today. You're telling me now for the first time. Then
you're not doing your job as a neutral arbiter of college football.
Well, I try to cover everyone in a fair and balanced manner. Oregon 38-10 over Illinois.
Look, Illinois, they've somehow found themselves at 6-1, still a top 25 team. I don't know how, I don't know why, but that ends this week. Oregon's going to unleash. They're going to expose what Illinois is, the lack of offense they have. The defense can only carry them so far. I've got Oregon. Give me 42-7, guys. Oregon rolls against Illinois.
Excellent prediction, Jacob. Roman.
I think Illinois has exposed some teams that are not good this year, i.e. Michigan. But with that being said, because of this lovely flag behind me here for all our YouTube viewers, I will not say who's going to win this game. I will just say I will agree with both you gentlemen.
Wow. Okay. Roman going out on a big time limb here. Let's see if we can get anyone to do that as we breeze through the last few games here. USC and Rutgers, these teams are combined 2-7 in Big Ten play after strong starts in the non-conference. This is a long trip, late kick for Rutgers. Weird Big Ten game on Friday night. Give me USC to finally win a game, 34-27.
Yeah, and USC favored by going on 2 touchdowns. Like, since when have we just all of a sudden said, oh, yeah, USC is good enough to outscore them by 2 scores? They'll win. Rutgers will keep this close. I mean, they do still have a winning record, believe it or not. So, look, I don't know. Is anybody really going to watch this on a Friday night? Sure, if you want to and have nothing else.
I'm a sicko.
I'm sorry. You have to. It's not my job to watch Rutgers and USC. We don't play them. I don't care. I'll take USC to win, but Rutgers will keep it closer than the bettors think.
There are 2 things that I love here. The first one is watching Kyle Monangai because he's not playing the Huskies. Watching Kyle Monangai run is a treat. The other one is picking against USC and watching them lose. So give me Rutgers here. I think they're pissed off after losing to a terrible UCLA team. I think they go on the road, get the upset.
Yeah, not a good performance for Greg Schiano's team at home last week, losing to UCLA. UCLA is not good, and they won a football game somehow, some way. I don't know if Minnesota's a good team. I don't think they're a bad one. I don't think they're a good one. Maryland, off the big win against USC. This screams emotional letdown spot for me. Give me Minnesota. Give me Minnesota big, 27-13.
Wow. See, okay, I'm going the other way. Minnesota's favored. They're at home. I think Maryland feeds off the win a week ago. Give me the Terps. I think they keep it rolling. That'll put them at, 5-3? Is that right? Maryland, keep it.
It would indeed.
I mean, hey, you never know. Don't sleep on that Maryland team. I'll take them over Minnesota. Why not?
Jacob, I'm with you. I like the way the Terps sling the rock all over the yard. I think they're a fun team to watch sometimes when they're able to get it right. And yeah, no, I think Maryland wins this game.
And last but certainly not least.
Oh, don't do it.
Maybe least. Northwestern at Iowa. Speaking of a team in need of a bounce back, Iowa loses at Michigan State last week. I thought they would get upset there of sorts. They weren't ranked per se. Indeed, they did. They're favored by about 2 touchdowns over Northwestern. I think this is an Iowa defense game, 20-3 over the Wildcats.
We talked about a game that was a total of 40.5 earlier. FanDuel has this at 37.5.
Oh,
37 points, gentlemen, in a Division I Power 4 college football game. That's illegal. That should be illegal. Look, Iowa's going to win. Northwestern's terrible. It won't be pretty. Give me Iowa 31-7, I think.
Oh, you're taking the over? Because I'm taking the under here.
I'm with Roman under, man.
You have to. I want to take the over just because I think it should happen. It's one of those should happen bets.
It should.
So I'll roll with it.
Sure, it should. It's not going to. Give me the under here. Iowa, this Northwestern team is just not fun football.
That's week 9 in the Big Ten. Jacob Goins, Locked On Hoosiers. Roman Tomashoff, Locked On Huskies. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate all of you as well. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.